Tom Gump, DG Lourdes Camalon, DG Marie-Françoise, PDGs, AGs, PPs, presidents, members of the Rotary family, all protocol respected, good evening. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar. I am Diksha, President of Rotary Club of Autrive, and it is an honor to be your host for this virtual gathering. Today, we have gathered from different corners of the world, united by our shared commitment to Rotary's ideals of service above self. We are privileged to have with us RIP Stephanie Urchick and PDG Tom Gump, who will talk on membership and new club development, the way forward. I encourage all participants to actively engage, ask questions, and share your thoughts during today's webinar. Together, we can create a meaningful dialogue that fosters understanding and drives positive change. Once again, welcome to our Rotary webinar. Let us embark on this journey of knowledge, inspiration, and service together. Without further ado, let us welcome our district governor, Lourdes Camalon, to the virtual stage. While Lourdes got a diploma in engineering from INSA Toulouse. His field of competence is education. He has been a Rotarian since 1995. He's also a founder member of Rotary Club of Saint-Paul-Bay and Saint-Denis Austral. He has participated at the Yaoundé and Abidjan Institute in Africa, amongst others. He even participated in the Orlando International Assembly in the United States. So, Lourdes, the virtual floor is yours. Lourdes, vous êtes là?
Oui, ça y est, je suis là. Je viens d'allumer mon micro, là. Chère présidente du Rotary International Elect, bonsoir et bienvenue dans notre district 92-20. Alors, je vais faire une petite présentation de notre district. Notre district est constitué de 7 pays, 6 îles dans l'océan Indien et un pays situé en Afrique, Djibouti. Nous comptons 85 clubs et actuellement, nous sommes 1835 rotariens et environ 400 rotaractiens. Nous avons aussi un large effectif concernant les interacts qui se situe principalement à l'île Maurice. Donc voilà ce que je voulais dire en introduction. Je suis très fier de participer à ce webinaire et j'aurai l'occasion tout à l'heure d'en dire un peu plus concernant notre district. Merci.
Merci, gouverneur. Arun?
Oui. Now we move to, thank you very much, DG Lourdes Camalon. Now we move to the presentation of both of our speakers today. First of all, we have the pleasure to welcome the RI President-elect, Stephanie Urchick. And Stephanie Urchick is a member of the Rotary Club of McMurray, Pennsylvania, in the USA. She will serve as RI President in 2024-2025. And she has been an RI Director and Rotary Foundation Trustee. She has served RI in numerous capacities, including as training leader, regional Rotary Foundation coordinator, and RI President's representative. In addition, Stephanie was a representative and member at large to 3 sessions of the Council on Legislation. Stephanie has also served as chair of the Rotary Strategic Planning Committee and the Rotary Foundation's Centennial Celebration Committee, as well as a member of various Rotary committees, including the Election Review Committee and Operational Review Committee. A Rotary member since 1991, Stephanie has participated in a variety of international service projects, including National Immunization Days in India and Nigeria. In Vietnam, she has worked with clubs to help build a primary school and traveled to the Dominican Republic to install water filters. A student of several Slavic languages, she has mentored new Rotary members in Ukraine and coordinated a Rotary Foundation grant for a mammography equipment and a biopsy unit for a hospital in Poland. In its commemorative book, The Rotary Club of Krakow, Poland noted Stephanie as a key figure for helping the rebirth of Rotary in post-communist Poland. Currently, Stephanie is helping to partner clubs and districts in the US with Rotary clubs in Albania, Kosovo, and Ukraine for humanitarian and educational services. Stephanie's professional background is in the higher education, consulting, and entertainment industry. She received her doctorate degree in leadership studies from Indiana University of Pennsylvania and has been recognized and awarded the Rotary Foundation and numerous community and international organizations. And one of the projects that she has done, which we hold very close to our heart, is about water. And at the Rotary Club of Retrieve, this is something that we cherish a lot. Similarly, Tom, PDG Tom, is the aide to the Rotary International President, and he's the presidential advisor to the Rotary International's 2025 Calgary International Convention Committee and the 2025 Presidential Peace Conference. He has also helped plan this year's International Assembly and Global Support Seminar. He has been very instrumental in bringing members into Rotary and has been very relevant to today's presentation, has been instrumental in forming new clubs around the world. And he has himself co-founded and helped others do the same. He will be the chair of Rotary Membership Growth Committee in 2025 and has previously served as a Rotary coordinator, assistant Rotary coordinator, and innovative club advocate. He is a regular feature in at all levels of Rotary events and regularly appears in Rotary publications. And he has served as International Assembly training leader and has co-chaired and chaired his Paired Zones Institute. Tom led his district to become only the third district in the world to ever have all its clubs designated as 100% Paul Harris Fellow Clubs, something that we all should aim to do. He has worked on more than 20 clubs, districts, and global grant projects totaling more than $3 million. He recently led 4 districts in securing the International Convention in Minneapolis in 2029, and he has personally invited me to attend. And he serves as chair of the host organizing committee. He previously served as a zone coordinator for promotion for 2 previous international conventions and as an assistant coordinator on a third. He is now working on getting legislation passed to have the Rotary vehicle license plates in his state. Tom has received Rotary International's Regional Service Award for Polio Free World and a Service Above Self Award, the Rotary Foundation's Citation for Meritorious Service, is a member of Rotary International's Membership Society for New Member Sponsors, Gold Level, has received the Zones 28 and 32's Individual Membership Innovation Award and the Zone 29 Public Image Award, and Zone 29's Most Impactful Road Track Award, among others. Tom is a proud member of Edina Morningside Rotary Club. His wife, Catherine, is a member of the Edina Noon Club. Their son, Andrew, is a member of Interact at his high school. The Gump family have hosted 7 fabulous Rotary Youth Exchange students over the years. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 stellar speakers today, and we invite all of you to make the most of the presentation. And I guess we are very well pampered today with such stellar people among us. And the floor is now yours, Stephanie and Tom.
Merci, Arun. Bonsoir. Good evening. Good day, my family of Rotary. It is such a pleasure for Tom and I to be able to speak to you today because we're going to talk about a topic that is very dear to both of us, and that is membership growth and development. And, if you have heard me speak before on Zoom, or if you've read any of the material in regional magazines or on our website, you know that I have been asking clubs and districts to become simply irresistible. And what that means in different parts of the world is different. You will know what that entails. It really means creating our Rotary events and our Rotary clubs so that as people come to join us, they feel a sense of belonging. When we are irresistible, the members who are with us will find it very difficult to leave. And those who are not yet with us will look and say, I'd really like to join that group. They're doing amazing things and having fun. And so when we talk about membership development and new clubs and being irresistible, we're really talking about three things. And Tom and I are going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about how to attract members to our existing clubs, which is not easy. We're going to talk about how to retain members in our existing clubs, which is not easy. We're going to talk about developing new clubs and creating that culture, which is a bit easier, but all three of them require work. They are intentional strategies. They are things that we do on purpose, not by accident, so that we have an organization that continues to grow and has a thriving future. So Tom, I'll turn the next bit of the program over to you.
Absolutely. So what we're going to focus on, and Stephanie laid out the three types of growth mechanisms, and surrounding all of that is also club culture. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. But when it comes to the path forward, what Rotary International Growth Committee and its studies that it has conducted has shown is that we cannot move forward unless we develop new clubs. So what we want to talk about today is how we're going to form a new club, what lessons we've learned from starting other clubs, what are the keys that all successful clubs that have formed have, and what are the opportunities for your area in starting new clubs?
So Tom mentioned something important. He mentioned the word culture. Every Rotary club has a culture. Put simply, that means, how do we do things around here? How do we make people feel? And again, culture is intentional. If you're in a traditional club and you've been around for a long time, there's definitely a culture that you've developed. It's the way your club meetings are organized. It's how you do things. It's whether or not you recite the four-way test. It's how you greet people. All of those things play a part in culture. So for us to think about our existing clubs, one thing we have to do up front is to do an assessment from time to time. We have to ask ourselves at least annually, and maybe even more frequently, how are we doing as a club? And there are many ways that clubs can do that. You can do it formally by using one of the tools that you can find on Rotary's website, the club assessment documents like the Healthy Club Checklist or others, membership surveys, or you can do it informally, simply by asking club members one-on-one or doing SurveyMonkey or some other informal way. But it is the best way up front to get an idea of how the club is performing and how people are feeling. Once you know where your members fall on certain areas, when you meet, the day of the week you meet, where you meet, you're better able to take a look at, are there things that we might try that are a little bit different? And if they are, then you have an opportunity to create some change. The picture that you see on the screen right now was a snapshot taking at one of my club socials. And if you look at that picture, you can see everybody is smiling, because one of the things that's very true about my club is that we have a culture of doing good in the world, but having a great time while we do it. Tom?
So the first step in forming a club, and it's a very important step, is to find your champion. Sometimes Stephanie refers to this person as the spark plug. You need someone who's got that passion, has that gumption to go out there and bring in new members. It's the person who knows why you're forming the club. What is the purpose of the club? People don't join a Rotary Club just to join a club. They join to do things. So doing fun service projects. This is a picture of Stephanie painting the outside of an apartment building in Korea. And I remember that day in particular because it wasn't too long ago, but there was an adult male who came up and just started to cry when he saw Stephanie, because she was the embodiment of Rotary International. And his mother had been living in an apartment full of mold and without electricity. And the Rotarians came in and they refurbished the apartment, got the electricity running, did remodeling, put up nice wallpaper. So that's the kind of feeling we want to give our members. Now, where do you find your members? The best way to find your champion, your members, are the local supporters. People in your area know that you are involved in Rotary. You might have asked people to join the club that you're in now, but they might have said no because it doesn't meet at a time that's convenient for them, or they don't like to have a fixed cost meal that they have to budget for. So that's why you start a new club, to reach more people of action in your area.
So another important idea is to think about recruiting the right members. When your original Rotary Club formed, you thought carefully about inviting the right kind of people who were just like you, who shared the core values of our organization: fellowship, leadership, integrity, diversity, and service. So when we start new clubs, that same message holds true. We're not talking about just getting people to come and fill seats. We're talking about people who understand the right way to be a Rotarian. So people. These are people who are around you. They're in your area. They're in your circle of friends. They're your associates that you work with. And don't forget about diversity. Diversity means a lot of different things, not just gender, although that's certainly one of them. It could also mean background. It could mean socioeconomic status. It could mean a lot of different things. Because when we bring diversity into our clubs, that means we have people who think and act differently. And that's the beauty of an organization. If we all were the same, if we all were the same gender, we're all the same thinkers, then we wouldn't really get anywhere, because no one would ever have new ideas.
Stephanie, you couldn't be more right. When we started, this picture is when we started the world's first ever Veterans Club. And it was interesting because the president and the vice president, they were both males, and they were from the 82nd Airborne, which in the US was a paratroopers. They jump out of planes. And our two membership chairs, they were both named Kathy, and their nicknames were Kathy Army and Kathy Navy, because one was in the Army and one was in the Navy. And it's interesting because they had diverse opinions from the two president and vice president of the clubs. The president and vice president wanted to grow this club as fast as possible, get in as many people as possible. And Kathy Army and Kathy Navy, what they wanted to do was to interview everyone and make sure that it was a good fit. So, of course, the right answer was a combination of the two. So that diversity of thought makes your club stronger, your new club stronger, and it helps weather storms that come up.
So one of the things I hear frequently about starting new clubs, whether they're standalone clubs or any of the new models, satellite clubs, corporate clubs, any of them, I hear Rotarians say, no, we don't want to start a new club because our members are going to gravitate to that, and we'll lose members in our original club. Well, we're here to tell you that that is a complete myth, because all of the surveys and research that Rotary does about new clubs show that 88% of the people coming into these new clubs were actually new to Rotary. They were not members coming from other clubs.
So the third step, what we found in forming new clubs, is it's better to start with a few people meeting to determine what they want. There'll be time for a large organizational meeting later. But when you get a few people together, it's interesting how you can focus on commonalities. If you're going to be an in-person club, what day you're going to meet, where you're going to meet, how you're going to meet. Is it going to be in person? Is it going to be virtual? What are your socials going to be? What are your service projects going to be? We found that if you bring a bunch of people together, it kind of fractures into different groups. But if you meet with just a couple people over lunch and find out what they have in common and what unites them, that helps a lot. And this is especially true in our cause-based clubs. Now, a cause-based club is like a regular Rotary club, but they focus on one particular cause. Yes, they do the 5 avenues of service, but they are there to serve a particular group. We started a club to end human trafficking, and now there's a dozen of them around the world. So their speakers are around that cause. Their service projects are around that cause. Now, it's interesting. Our biggest problem with Rotary membership is people leaving. We don't have a problem bringing them in, but people leave. And they also, 10% leave in the first year, and just over 50% leave within the first 3 years. What we found out is these cause-based clubs keep the new members there longer. And let's face it, after you've been there for 3 years, you're like all of us on this call. You have your friends and you end up staying. So these cause-based clubs, it's like a magnet that draws people in the community together so they stay together longer until they know about Rotary, and then they stay in Rotary.
And since you have a special passion for water and sanitation projects, that could be an area that you start to look at in terms of starting some of these smaller cause-based clubs, satellite clubs, or even Rotaract clubs, because that's a special mission that you have. So I mentioned this earlier. You see on the screen now one of our membership satisfaction surveys. It's really important to find out what members want. We can't guess at what they want. We need to ask them what they want. And that's one of the first steps of any kind of endeavor, whether it's starting a new club or whether it's thinking about how to bring some life into your existing club. You really have to start with asking people what they want.
Stephanie, you're so right. What Stephanie and I see is the biggest mistake that people make when forming a new club, especially if they haven't formed a club or the district hasn't formed a club before, is they want to make it just like their club. Well, Stephanie and I are what I call in traditional clubs. She calls them legacy clubs. But my club meets at a Tuesday morning at 7:30 at a country club. Well, I've already asked all my friends that I know, that I worship with, that I work out with, that I work with, to join my club. And it was right for a lot of people. When my year as president, we brought in 31 people into my club. But what I soon discovered is there's certain things about my club that don't work. So we don't want to start a mini club of the club that we're in. What we want to do is we want to ask them what they want, and we want to meet them where they are, meet their schedule, meet their time frame. And then the next step is securing funds. So when we secure funds, there's an old way of doing it, and then there's a new way of doing it. In many parts of the world, and this is true in North America, most of the new clubs that were started, and we don't start enough clubs in North America. Stephanie will tell you we've only started 52 last year, and there's some districts in some area of the world that started that many in their district. But it's a mistake to just let the biggest, oldest, largest clubs start these clubs because they're the ones that have money. Usually the first club that a district starts is a young professional club, which is good. But we want all clubs, whether they be small, medium, or large, to be able to start a new club. And there's different ways to do it. And sometimes we hear, well, we can't start a club unless you have money. Well, you know, the reality is when we start clubs, you can start a club for as little as $1,000 to $1,500 US. There's certain things that are nice to have, such as name bags or name badges, or a case to hold the name badges, or pull-up banners, or a bell and a gavel, if you want to have those kind of things. But what Stephanie and I find out is if you get other clubs, not just one club, to give dollars and let that be the only club contributing, but let all the districts around the area and all the clubs around the district in a particular area give in kind different gifts, like give a microphone, give a podium, because then all of them have buy-in into this. The other thing that we've seen that is a new way of doing things is to have a pro-growth policy in your district. Your district can actually meet, if you have a corporate board or you have a governance board, they can decide not to charge any fees for the first year to give this new club a start. So, of course, they're going to have to pay Rotary International dues. But if you waive those dues, not only does it help a club that's getting started, but it also lets that club know that they have support from the district. And then invite all those people who have contributed to your chartering ceremony.
So it's really important at the beginning to get people together and hold organizational meetings. What that means is people are going to have questions about what is Rotary? What's the purpose? What do you do? How do I fit in? So at your organizational meetings, you certainly can answer some of those questions. When you think about having a meeting, you want to make sure that it's a free meeting and that it's easy for people to get to, a central location. And at the organizational meeting, this is where you have an opportunity to find out who has a passion for leadership so that you can choose officers. It's helpful if you do use a PowerPoint because that can help keep you organized, just as we're doing today.
So the next step is not a scary step. So many times when people think about starting a new club, they think there's all this paperwork and it's really hard to do. There's only 5 pieces of paperwork. And actually, number 2 there, you don't even have to do because RI does that for you. They just put your name in the standard club constitution. So you do an application for a Rotary Club, it's only 4 pages. For a Rotaract Club, it's 3 pages. And a Satellite Club, it's only 2 pages. And the last page of it is probably the hardest part, and that's the member list. So you can fill that in when members are coming in. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, the bylaws, you can specify whatever you want to do in your bylaws, and you can make that different. But again, the club constitution's got to be standard. But those few items is all you need to do to form a club, paperwork-wise.
And so Tom mentioned the actual application. You can see her on the screen that they basically have just a few sections for you to fill out with the name of the club, some information about how to contact the club, who the advisor is going to be. And then the second form you see is the certification form, and that's for Rotaract. So it is, again, a very simple form. There are just a few questions to answer, so it shouldn't be a scary process for anyone.
So the hardest part about filling out the form is getting the officers. Now, you can just ask them, and they usually, people volunteer, and it's pretty easy to do. What Stephanie and I have in our experience forming new clubs have found out the hardest position to fill is the Rotary Foundation chair. And you know, if you listen to what Stephanie said about 88% are new to Rotary, well, that's why it's hard to pick a Rotary Foundation chair, because a lot of them don't know about what the Rotary Foundation does. And if the few members who have been in Rotary know about it, that might not be their passion. So what you can do is you could appoint a person to that position if they agree to it. And then after a year or so, you could change that person out. But again, there'll be someone who steps up. You just have to ask.
Another way you could deal with that is to do something my club did. We recognized that as new clubs were forming, in our case, we started a satellite club. We knew that people were new to Rotary. So every 8 weeks, we have a special social that is dedicated for the new satellite club. And only 1 or 2 members of our original Rotary Club go. And the whole purpose of the social is to talk Rotary. So yes, we have beverages. Yes, we have some food. But the 2 Rotarians who go speak to the members of the new satellite about topics in Rotary. So that's our way of helping new members get a handle on what are the important elements that they need to know in order to function in Rotary.
That's a really good way to do it, Stephanie. So one question that we often get is, do we need to formalize our entity? Do we need to have a corporation? Whatever your area has in way of state and government regularities. RI does not, Rotary International does not require you to have a formal corporate structure. However, what we found out is in many areas of the world, if you want to open a bank account in the name of the entity, it's good to have a formal corporate structure, a partnership, a limited liability company, a corporation, whatever is the most appropriate in your area. You know, a lot of times we see clubs form without that, and then the software is in one person's name, or the bank account is in one person's name, and they might be guaranteeing payment of a certain amount to keep that account live. So what we found out is for continuity purposes, it's good to do this. Now, I would wait personally until after your group, your club has been approved by Rotary International, because when you file that application, sometimes the name that you requested is changed to add a country identifier or an area identifier. You don't want to have to go back to the governmental agency and say, hey, we need to do a name change, because that's just another form and maybe another payment to the government. So get your entity formed with Rotary International, then form your corporate entity, and then open up your bank account and you'll be in business. The Constitution we already talked about. That's something that you shouldn't. I made this mistake when I formed my first club with the help of others. I redid the Constitution and it wasn't approved by Rotary International. But the bylaws is a document that you can actually put in things that are different about your club. So we mentioned before that the hardest part about filling out the paperwork is the last page, which is a page for each of the individuals that are joining your club. Like Stephanie said, there's going to be information you have to put in. They'll want your each member's home address, a secondary home address, a business address, a phone number, a secondary phone number. Do you want your Rotary magazine electronic or in print? You know, those kind of things. But there is an easy way to do this. If you call club and district support in your area and you ask them for this Excel spreadsheet that you see, you could actually fill that out and just have one sheet instead of 30 different sheets if you have 30 charter members. The key to filling out the sheet is don't leave anything blank. If someone doesn't have a middle name, just put none applicable or NA. Because if you leave a lot of blanks, then club and district support is going to call you and they're going to put a higher scrutiny level on their review. So just don't leave any blanks. But if there's not an answer, you can say no answer. And the key with the payment is make sure that your number of charter members matches the $15. Once you submit your application, you might end up getting a few new members. Don't add those members until after your application's been approved, because if you revise your application, it gets put at the bottom of the pile. You can still call them charter members at your organizational night.
And so a final message is be sure to celebrate. Have a chartering event. Whether you are an in-person new club or a virtual club, you need to schedule an evening or another time during the week where you all get together and celebrate this new group that is formed. Because remember, you are a gift to the community. Each time we form new clubs, we're presenting our communities with a gift. So I can't stress how important this is. I can't stress it enough. It's very important. Plus, it also gives the members of the new club the idea that they have just become a part of something special. And of course, if you can, invite the media. It can be your local newspapers, it can be radio stations, it can be people in your district who are skilled at social media. Take lots of pictures and make sure that you post them prominently to help celebrate this new gift to the community.
I couldn't agree with you more, Stephanie. I remember when I started my first club with the help of others, my district governor said, you need to have a party. And I was thinking, oh, I just started this club. I want to take a break. But he was so right. And the other opportunity it gives you is you can invite the family members of those charter members. It's interesting how when you're forming a club and you need to get to the 20 members, that there will be 5 or 6 people on the sideline not sure if they want to start because they don't know if you're actually going to get it started. But as soon as you charter, then they come in because they know it's going to happen. And you know, the family members, they could be your next members that join the club. So the other thing you want to do is after you get formed is you want to make sure that your service projects match with the function of the club. And the purpose of the club. And this is especially true with cause-based clubs. You know, when we started the Veterans Club, the first project we did was we redid the first floor of a veterans home for homeless veterans to put in a pool table and foosball and all those kind of things so they could have camaraderie. Because remember, it's not about being a veteran when you join the Veterans Club. It's about serving veterans. This is a project that Stephanie and I worked on in Minnesota where we're making sanitary napkin packs for women around the world that we took to various places when we went to Guatemala and Honduras. But again, this was important to that club because it was one of the goals that they were working on. You just have to match the service projects with the focus of the club.
So this slide is a reminder of what the keys to success are. So when you're starting a new club, these are 5 things you need to remember. Very, very important. It's critical that you find a passionate champion or champions with an S, the people who are going to also be on the bandwagon with you, who understand the importance of growing Rotary. You also want to make sure that your group is focused around friendship and fellowship and that you have fun in addition to serving. Number 3 is making sure that there is this desire to serve. Rotary clubs serve their communities. The communities start in our backyards, but they don't end there. So clubs will become involved in community activities and then spread out and look for international service opportunities. New clubs started with friends, and we all have them. There are friends, there are relatives, there are associates, our neighbors. So that's where we need to share the message of Rotary. Non-Rotarians, by and large, have a perception that Rotary isn't for them because despite the fact that for years we have marketed and told our stories, most people think that Rotary is rich old men eating out. And that is not what we are. Look at the screen here. I mean, we are so very different and diverse. So we need to remind people what Rotary really is. And finally, make sure that you have the support from your club if you're starting a satellite, or from the district if you're starting a new club, because that becomes critical as you move forward.
So we're often asked, where's the biggest opportunities to form new clubs? So what we've seen is when you start a club, it seems to inspire other clubs. So When we started our Veterans Club a few years ago, they were starting popping up all over the world. And suicide prevention clubs also popped up because of that. End human trafficking clubs are very prevalent right now. There's a lot of our Rotarians who are focused on this cause, and I think we can bring a lot more people into Rotary with that. There's autism clubs. Environmental clubs are great. You know, the one club that every district should have, and Stephanie talks about this often, is a virtual club. If your district doesn't have a passport club or a club where people who can't make Rotary meetings but still want to be involved in Rotary, every district should have that. So if someone's leaving your district, what you can do is you can call them up and say, why are you leaving? And it might be, oh, it's too expensive, too much time. Well, do you know that we have a passport club and the dues are very minimal because you don't have to pay for food, and it's a way you can join virtually, even if you're a pilot or you're in a profession where you can't make meetings during the day. Literacy clubs, WASH projects, as Stephanie mentioned. Australia, they have 2 clubs that are forming now for homelessness, and really any place that you can serve others.
And you know, this list is not exhaustive. You know, it's inherent in us as Rotary leaders to take a look at our communities to see where there may be people who want to serve, but who have not yet been introduced to the concept of Rotary. When I was in India last year, I had an opportunity to meet the president of a Rotary Club for visually impaired people. So most of the people in the club were either blind or had vision issues, but yet they were all interested in serving their community. So we just need to open our eyes and look around. And I know we can find people everywhere around the world who are interested in doing just that. So thank you for letting us share our ideas today about new club development and a little bit about what we can do with our existing clubs to help attract members. Remember, we want to attract members, retain members, and then start new clubs, because that is the way we will grow Rotary. And we are happy to take any questions that may pop up. I'm not sure how we're going to handle that. Disha, maybe you have some ideas about, or Arun, how are we handling questions?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Stephanie and Tom. I guess this has been a very fruitful session, especially for me, because for Mauritius, I'm the incoming new club development chair. So I guess it has been very enlightening. And I have had this conversation with my district governor-elect, DG Marie-Françoise, in relation to how to develop new clubs in the district and also consolidate. Because one of the questions that I had asked her is whether new club development is about developing new clubs or consolidating existing ones. So I think I have my answer today. Very importantly, before we proceed to questions, I know DG Ludes has a few remarks, and I would pass on to him if he has any questions and a few remarks in relation to the status of the district in relation to new club development. Ludes, DG Ludes,
Yes.
c'est à toi.
Bien, merci beaucoup. J'ai bien écouté les 2 intervenants. J'ai appris beaucoup de choses et je vais vous partager mon expérience personnelle, puisque j'ai été membre fondateur de 2 clubs. Pour le premier club, je suis venu en tant qu'invité et je n'étais pas partie prenante pour la création de ce club. Par contre, au bout de 20 ans après, j'ai décidé de créer un nouveau club en concertation avec mon ancien club. Et je l'ai créé de la manière suivante, c'est-à-dire que j'ai pris mon carnet d'adresses et je me suis aperçu que j'avais plus de 50 amis. Et j'ai envoyé un email à ces 50 amis et j'ai fait une réunion. La première réunion, je n'ai pas parlé du tout de Rotary. J'ai parlé de l'humanitaire, j'ai parlé de service, j'ai parlé d'aide à la personne, j'ai parlé de social, mais pas de Rotary. Et c'est au bout de la 3e ou la 4e réunion que j'ai commencé à parler de Rotary. Et c'est comme ça que j'ai créé le club. Moi, je pense que pour créer un club, il faut oser. Beaucoup de Rotariens n'osent pas. Et je pense que c'est la seule façon de pouvoir créer un nouveau club, c'est d'oser, faire un peu le bilan autour de soi, dans sa région, de ses amis. Et je crois que pas tous les Rotariens ont cette capacité, mais je pense que si on ose, si on veut, on peut créer d'autres clubs. Et aujourd'hui, ben, mon club se porte très bien. On est à une vingtaine de membres, on a démarré à 30, mais le club fonctionne très bien et on fait de très beaux projets. Et je pense, après mon mandat de gouverneur, je prendrai mon bâton de pèlerin et je crois que j'irai inciter d'autres personnes à créer des clubs. Bon, déjà, dans notre district, pour cette année, à la fin de mon mandat, je pense qu'on aura 3 nouveaux clubs dans le district. Donc voilà ce que je voulais partager avec vous.
You're absolutely right, Governor. We have to be daring. I said earlier that we have to be intentional. New clubs don't happen by accident. It's because leaders get out of our seats and we go and we make them happen. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing it.
Merci.
Ok, merci DG l'UDS. Ce fut un plaisir. Maintenant, je passe la parole à président nommé Navin. Navin, President nominee Navin, I pass on to you. And please start with the questions that we have received.
Thank you, Oren. So good evening to President-elect Stephanie and Tom. We have the first question. We have around 7-8 questions. So the first one is it necessary to create new clubs, even if we have a population of 1.2 million and 32 Rotary clubs in Mauritius?
Take it, Tom. That's for you.
We would say yes. The reality is, yes, we have a lot of Rotarians, but just think of how many people that we could add to Rotary if we reached out to those potential people of action where they are and ask them, why haven't you joined Rotary yet? You know, it's interesting, when I asked all my friends to join, there were some that couldn't come to my meeting because, as I said, I met at 7:30 a.m. Well, in the US, many people have to take their children to the bus stop at that time so they can get on a bus to go to school. Or there might be a young professional who can't take off early in the morning because they have to be at work at that time. So instead of saying you have to fit into this box that is Rotary, we can throw out that box and say, how do you want to serve the world? And we can help them. I mean, we have district grants, we have global grants, we have all these things to offer. But what we really need and what our strength is the people. So yes, we should form new clubs to capture those people that we haven't yet captured. I know we have 1.4 million Rotarians and Rotaractors, but I want to have 10 million. Thank you for the question.
And let me add that, you know, whether or not clubs realize it, all of our clubs have built-in attrition, because without even trying, we lose members every year. People pass away, people move, people get disengaged from Rotary and take off. There are lots of reasons why people don't stay in our clubs. So unless we are intentional about looking for new members and or starting new clubs, that 1.4 million can quickly diminish and become a much less number. So we must be intentional.
And let's face it, there's enough that needs to be done in the world and more good that needs to be done in the world. And as Stephanie always says,
yes.
We have more
So
people.
thank you for that answer. For the next question, what would be the culture which a new club should embrace?
Well, that depends to some extent on what kind of new club it is. If that new club is made up of similar individuals, and you've, again, asked them what they're interested in, what they want, you'll get that information from the members as they come into the club. So some new clubs have a culture that's built around having a little more formalness to it. Some clubs are less formal and are more interested in having fun while they serve. It's the members themselves who will develop the culture of the club. And that's why starting new clubs is so much easier, because you create the culture as people come in. Trying to change the culture of an existing club, a traditional club, is much harder. It's not impossible, but it's much harder.
Navin?
Yes, the other question is, what would be the culture which a new club should embrace?
Well, I've just talked about that from my perspective. Tom, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I do. I really appreciate your answer, Stephanie, and you're absolutely right. And just like to give an example to bring it home. You know, when I was district governor, we were really working on diversity. You know, I live in Minneapolis, which is where George Floyd was murdered. So we were working on that. And the other thing we were working on was gender parity during our year. And at the end of my year as district governor, we went from 30% female to almost 33% female. So we were doing an analysis at the end of the year, trying to figure out what did we do, because we did it right, but we wanted to know what we did right so we can repeat it. And we looked at, and we don't have, because of US privacy laws, racial data. We don't keep that at Rotary International, but we do keep gender data. And it's interesting because when we looked at how we moved that needle, it was with our new clubs. So our environmental club had over 50% female members. Our End Human Trafficking Club had over 60% female members. And we started a club called the Network for Empowering Women. That had almost 70% females. Those three clubs by themselves moved the needle. So what we started to realize is we looked at our older clubs and they seem to be declining in numbers, but our newer clubs are growing in numbers. But the newer clubs come more diverse. They have a culture that is more diverse. So sometimes we can solve our problems in Rotary by forming new clubs. Thank you.
Okay. The other question that we have is how to avoid erosion of club culture if you have mass recruitment.
How to avoid erosion of culture if you have mass recruitment. You need to tell me more about what that means. What is mass recruitment?
So, for example, if you have, from what we've been told, is if you have 12 to 13 members and you get approached by another 12 or 20 or 13 members, it's possible for people to bring new culture to the club. So how do you avoid the erosion of the club culture?
Well, you know, if people come to the club that has formed, and what they're seeking, what they're interested in doesn't match what that first group has, there's a message there. And the message is they have an opportunity to form a different club or to become a satellite of a different club that more closely matches what they're interested in. When an original group of 12 to 30 get together, they're going to form around causes or interest or ways of doing things that make sense for them. If another group happens to look at that and it doesn't fit, then our recommendation is that they look for other clubs or they look to form their own group that will more closely match what it is they have in mind.
Okay. The question that I also have is, does new club creation not affect cohesion of existing clubs in the district? If yes, how to mitigate?
So I'm really glad you asked that question. I'm really glad you asked the past question because both of them bring up the point that a culture is always changing. You know, Stephanie defines culture as the things, how we get things done in a club. Well, every day or, you know, throughout the year, you have new people coming in, you have other people leaving. Well, that culture changes. And what a club wants today might be different from a year from now. So I'm very glad Stephanie brought up the point we should do it once a year. That's why, because it is. Now, clubs are different. The club next door to a club, even if they're in the same city, they're different. But we do not find that those differences between the club breaks club apart. Just like Stephanie was saying, diversity within a club makes it stronger because you have different viewpoints. Diversity within a district and having different kinds of clubs makes it stronger. We have a pride club in our club. They do different kinds of fundraisers than other folks do. Our veterans club, they help the other clubs clean their veterans memorial. And they have other clubs have a signing at the holidays of cards for the military. They ask our veterans club to help. The End Human Trafficking clubs, they go speak to other clubs about what they're doing. So diversity in a district doesn't break it apart, it makes it stronger.
Okay. And we have another question. How about public image chair as an officer? The three key positions are foundation, membership, and public image. Public image is the key in promoting your club and visibility.
Absolutely correct. Those three go hand in hand. You know, and I mentioned during the presentation that sometimes non-Rotarians have the wrong impression about Rotary. So we really have to promote Rotary to an internal audience as well as to an external audience. And my favorite actually is speaking to non-Rotarians. Let's face it, everybody on this Zoom call knows what Rotary is. And you love Rotary, just like I do. Tom and I love Rotary. You love it. Look, we're on this call. We could be doing so many different things, but we love Rotary. But it's the people who are not on the call. It's the people who are in our communities who don't get us, who don't understand. And so I always tend to talk to non-Rotary audiences by starting to telling them that we've changed. You know, we're an old organization. We were started in 1905, and not very many things last for more than 100 years, but we have. But in addition to lasting that long, we also have recognized that the world has changed. And so we have changed too. We brought in women in the late 80s. Our council in 2016, our council on legislation, opened up the doors and created new meeting models for us. That's where e-clubs came from, and passport clubs and satellite clubs. So the message to people who aren't in Rotary is that if you have the heart and the hands for service, and you have the ability to understand and accept the core values of Rotary, then there's a place for you. There's a way for you to fit into our organization. So for me, the public image message to non-Rotarians is even more important than our internal messages, although those are critical too. We need to continue to tell the story so that existing Rotarians understand more about the mission of who we are and what we do.
Okay. Another question. Previously, we used to have classification as a criteria. Now, as criteria, now we are also looking at satellites or clubs with the same interest or for the same cause. How does the RI reconcile both ideas, and is it a favored direction?
Tom, you can handle that first.
Sure, absolutely. Rotary no longer requires that there be only one classification. And Arun, I'd like to share a story with you. You know, Rotary could have had me work for 17 more years for free if they would have let me in when I first tried to join in 1996. But I was an assistant district attorney in the town I lived in, and my boss, she had the only law enforcement classification. So I wasn't allowed to join. I joined the JCs. But it was interesting when I was asked to join Rotary again after I moved to another location. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, Rotary didn't want me then. Maybe Rotary doesn't need me now. And, you know, the only reason I came back is because my friend asked me about 24 times. So I learned a lesson in persistence and how important it is, because I went to my first meeting, I was hooked and I loved it. So classifications are no longer required. And really, if we want to grow Rotary, it's not practical. You know, the grassroots of that was to give people an opportunity to exceed in their area. If you had a realtor or you were an attorney, they didn't want competition originally, is what I understand why they had that classification system. But now there are so many different attorneys. You have a divorce attorney, a corporate attorney, a real estate attorney, a wills and estates attorney. Same with other kinds of classifications. So we're about networking, but we're also about service. And Stephanie always says we need more hearts and hands to do more good in the world. So let's not enforce the classifications, because it really doesn't have a place for Rotary anymore. Did at one time, but not anymore. Thank you.
But the way we do look at classifications now is in terms of diversity. So, you know, if there is a club that's looking, you know, I always tell clubs, look at your community. And if your club mirrors your community, then you have a handle on the future. And if it doesn't, you have an opportunity. So that means a lot of different things. Of course, it means gender, but it could also mean occupation. It could mean so many different things. Age, it could mean, you know, a tremendous number of things. And certainly classification is one of them.
Okay, because there's a common joke in our district. When two dentists try to join a club, one joined under the classification of dentist, the other one as tooth extractor.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And the other question is, what are WASH projects?
WASH projects. WASH is the water and sanitation acronym that we use for projects that deal with that part of our focus area.
Okay, and we have one question, well, two questions from our district officer for membership, District Officer Hans. I do have a question. Can we transform an existing classical club into a focus club? It is absolutely key to retaining existing members.
All right, Tom.
Yes, we have had clubs that have successfully transferred from one type of club to another type of club, and it's not any formal paperwork. We had a club in Houston, Texas, that was around speech making, and that was you know, their emphasis, and it was losing members till it only had a few members left. They actually changed that into a veterans club, and they got a whole bunch of new members. So yes, but I'd caution you to make sure that you do it intentionally, like Stephanie says, and ask the members what they want, because sometimes you'll have a silent majority and not know it, and then you'll have a vocal minority who is pushes things to a certain way. You know, we once had a club, the president called up and said that it was a small club, about 22, and he said that half of his members wanted to do away with the four-way test, and the other half wanted to keep it. Well, I didn't go into, you can't do away with the four-way test without a council legislation, but I just said do a survey, because he wanted to know what to do, and call me back. They did a survey, they called us back, and what we found out, there was only 2 people who wanted to do away with the four-way test, and 20 wanted to keep it, that same percentage for the number that responded. So a lot of times you can use that survey as a tool to go back to your club or district and say, the majority have spoken and they want this. Because when Stephanie was talking about the importance of surveys, it gives your members an opportunity to feel like they have been heard, especially if you communicate what the survey says and you actually make some of the changes if it makes sense for your club or district to make them. Again, the buy-in.
Okay. Another question from our district officer for membership. Diversity of actions causes is great, but the practice of Rotary, as per Rotary core values, should stay coherent. In this sense, it remains a challenge to create a lot of new clubs, while the historical older clubs tend to keep a more conservative stand about what Rotary is or should remain. Inevitably, a gap is already existing.
So that is true. We have historical clubs, and some areas of the world, it's hard for them to change. I mean, if we speak to Vietnam, Stephanie and I have realized they want to change. But you go to Thailand and they very much respect their elders, and their elders do not want to change. So in that area, when you want to respect the people that have the history and they like the tradition, you can start a new club that has new traditions. And then that way you don't insult your current members. Stephanie is good about saying that when you are going through a change model, don't ever be heavy-handed and force that change on individuals, but rather the individuals communicate what the change is going to be, paint that beautiful picture of what the club can do, more members, more funds raised for the foundation. And then the people who are resistant to that change, we don't want to lose them. Give them certainty that it's going to be okay.
Okay.
In general, the only one who likes change is a baby in a wet diaper. So as leaders, when we are looking at making changes, it's important that we help people understand how that change is going to make their life better or make their club better. That's what our role is as leaders in change management.
And if you have a club that's resistant to change, and we all know those clubs, you can make small changes. Stephanie and I were at a Pets one time where we asked all the president-elects, what's the one change you're going to make? And there was a gentleman named Troy, and Troy says, I want pie for dessert. And everyone laughed because people had grand changes, and his change seemed to be simple, have a dessert that people like. Well, we ran into Troy. We didn't know his last name, so we called him Troy the Pie Guy. We ran into Troy the Pie Guy a few years later, and we asked him if he got his pie, and he had his pie, and they kept the pie because he kept his whole president line of his club in the midst of the change. But what he said, it caused a big change, that people started making other changes, at first small changes and big changes, and his club went from being a club resistant to change that one to a club that was accepting of innovation. And they grew to be the second largest club in their district. So you don't always have to start with a big change. You can do a small change.
Yeah. Okay. And we have a question from President Ravi Ramboju. Can we create a fellowship that is based only for Mauritius instead of creating an international fellowship where we need to find members from 5 different countries? This can create more Rotarian bonding on common causes and projects.
Not currently, because the requirements for a fellowship is that it is international. So I would say that if you wanted to create something locally, that you create it, but it wouldn't be a fellowship. It would be a group of like-minded people who were interested in that particular, whatever that particular area is.
Okay. Next question is in French, but then I'll translate it. Peut-on instaurer un système de motivation pour inciter à la création de nouveaux clubs? So can we establish a motivation system to encourage the creation of new clubs?
We have done that. And one of the ways we're doing that is exactly what we've done here this evening. By holding these kinds of seminars, by talking about this, by writing about it, by hoping that you as leaders will go through your district and continue to share the message about how important it is to start new clubs. This is where the motivation starts. We want all of you to be inspired by the message that Tom and I share about how important it is to start new clubs.
We have one question from Imran Ghaznavi from Pakistan.
Hello, Imran.
What about nationality-based clubs based in other than home country? So basically, it's about what about clubs based in other than home country.
So we do have examples of that in Chicago. They have 2 Hispanic clubs. There are Latina clubs in other places. So yes, it works well in countries that have a large expat populations. And Imran's the kind of individual I know that he's going to make things happen regardless of what the policies say. And if it works, we'll get the policies to catch up later.
Okay.
We have to grow Rotary. It's important that we do it now, not wait.
Okay. Two more questions. One is, can Rotarians not able to attend meetings regularly but willing to help become honorary members?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Can Rotarians not able to attend meetings regularly but willing to help become honorary members? So instead of them being regular members, can they become honorary members?
My initial reaction to that is that if there are a group of people interested in promoting the work that's being done in the community, that would be more accurately done as a Rotary Community Corps. Community Corps members are not Rotarians, but they are people in the community who are interested in serving and making the community better as a stand alongside to the local Rotary Club.
Yeah. We have a question in French that we would like to that is, peut-on créer un incubateur pour la création de nouveaux clubs afin d'éviter la disparition rapide et garantir leur pérennité? Which means, can we create an incubator for the creation of new clubs in order to prevent their rapid disappearance and ensure their sustainability?
Interesting question. Tom, do you have any thoughts on incubators?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. You know, the reality is when you talk about membership, people focus on it. You are all leaders on this call today. If we set up a group in North America, we set up Innovative Club Advocates, which meet regularly with districts to help them start new clubs. There's all these misconceptions that it's hard to start a new club. It's difficult to start a new club. We can give you all kinds of examples where that's just not the case. So having incubators and bringing them around to other groups and letting people know the truth that it's not hard to start new clubs, that'll get people excited about it and they'll do it. You know, it's interesting because when we go to a district and we talk to a lot of districts haven't started club for 10 years or more. But once they start that first club, within a few years, they start several other clubs because they start realizing it brings a lot of energy. It doesn't cannibalize their existing firm. So yes, the more we do it, the more we show how it can be done, the more we talk about it, the better things will happen, the more clubs will start. Thank you.
Okay, and we have one comment from the district governor-elect from District 9010 that he has developed an incentive system in relation to having PHFs for every president who creates a new club. So this is something good. District 9010 is Morocco, Algeria, Britannia. And the last question, I think we have kept the best for the last. Is it possible to remove all contributions, district tax or district tax or Rotary International contribution for all new clubs per capita for the districts to develop themselves?
That's a question for the Council on Legislation or for the Rotary Foundation, if you're talking about contributions. You have to keep in mind that we are an international organization, so decisions like that would either be made by the Board of Directors or by a motion by the Council on Legislation.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. We have a few questions, but then I guess this should be it for this evening. I will pass on to the President Diksha to start for the vote of thanks. Thank you very much, RIP Stephanie and PDG Tom.
Thank you. Well, due to time constraint, we apologize to those whose questions have not been answered, but hopefully there will be a next session next time. And as we come to the end of our webinar, I would like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude to everyone who has contributed to make this event a success. First and foremost, our heartfelt thanks to Stephanie and Tom for their insightful presentation, your dedication to Rotary, and your inspiring words have truly motivated us to continue our service journey with renewed vigor. I would like also to thank the organizing committee and volunteers who have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure the smooth running of this webinar. Your dedication and hard work have not gone unnoticed, and we are truly grateful for all that you have done. Last but not least, a big thank you to all our participants for your active participation, thoughtful questions, and valuable contributions. It is your engagement that has made this webinar a meaningful and enriching experience for all of us. As we conclude this webinar, let us carry forward the spirit of Rotary and continue to make a positive impact in our communities and beyond. Thank you once again to everyone involved, and we look forward to seeing you at our future Rotary events. Together, let us continue to serve humanity and create magic in the world. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much.